In this episode, we discuss US visa revocation for Indian students. We also talk about why BJP MP Nishikant Dubey is again at the center of a controversy. But first, we talk about the arrest of diamond merchant Mehul Choksi. Hi, I'm Ichha Sharma, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. On the 12th of April, Mehul Choksi, a key accused in the 13,500 crore rupees Punjab National Bank loan fraud, was arrested in Belgium. He had reportedly arrived there last year for cancer treatment after living in Antigua and Barbuda as a citizen since 2018. His wife is believed to be a Belgian citizen. India has now requested his extradition so the 65-year-old fugitive can face trial back home. In this segment, my colleague Niharika Nanda speaks with Deeptiman Tiwary from the Indian Express, who breaks down the case, the charges against Choksi, and what the extradition process could look like.
Deeptiman, for our listeners' benefit, can you remind us what is the case surrounding diamond merchant Mehul Choksi?
Okay, so Mehul Choksi is a diamond merchant from Gujarat, and he, along with his nephew, Nirav Modi, they together took a loan of around 13,500 crore from Punjab National Bank over a long period of time, and then basically defrauded the bank on it. How they did this? What they would do is they would get the bank to issue letters of undertaking. These were letters which, would allow them a bank guarantee from the Punjab National Bank to avail of a loan at a foreign shore. And these LOUs would have to be paid by the borrower, that is Mehul Choksi and Nirav Modi, within 3 months. But in connivance with certain bank officials of the bank's Brady branch in Mumbai, what they did was they kept renewing these LOUs by adding interest to it. So what happened that all these LOUs kept piling up. And when the loan became way too much to be repaid, they just fled the country. That is the whole PNB scam. And that is how they defrauded the bank.
And you write that when the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate started investigating the case, they found out that a chunk of the diamonds as part of their assets were actually fake, right?
Yeah, that was especially the case with Mehul Choksi. In fact, Enforcement Directorate and CBI started investigation into the matter around February 2018. By this time, both Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksi had fled the country. So after that, Enforcement Directorate, which has the powers to attach assets of the accused in its cases, began attaching their assets. So when it seized diamonds owned by Mehul Choksi, which ran under the brand name of Gitanjali Gems, and there were multiple stores across the country and abroad, it was found that most of those diamonds were fake. In fact, initially when Enforcement Directorate confiscated these diamonds, it said that we have already recovered assets to the tune of 5,000 crore. And since the entire fraud committed individually by Mehul Choksi was around 6,000 crores, so it was understood that most of the money has been recovered. But what actually happened is that when these diamonds were sent to the laboratory for examination, it was found that most of them were fake. And so today, after so many years, and after Enforcement Directorate has attached almost all his properties in India, and attached his assets in terms of shares and bank deposits and everything else, and even, certain factories on foreign shores, the total recovery today is only 2,500 crore. So that is how a fraudulent business this guy was actually carrying.
Now, since 2018, Mehul Choksi has been living in Antigua. Can you tell us how that can be and why no action was taken against him?
So it is like this. He became a citizen of Antigua in around November 2017. That is before this entire case actually broke out. PNB actually approached the CBI for an FIR only in January 2018, and in February 2018, this FIR was registered. By that time, Mehul Choksi had already acquired the citizenship of Antigua. And in January, he fled the country and first went to the US, and from there he went to Antigua. So he had obviously acquired this citizenship through investment by making some investments in that country, and it is kind of not very difficult to actually acquire citizenship in some of these very small countries, which are in the Americas, or even certain tax havens, which are basically islands with not very huge economy, but run through these tax haven investments. So people easily get citizenship of these countries. And since then it has been, and there are certain procedures in Antigua for extradition to happen. And that matter has been going on for a long time now. And extradition proceedings can take their own time.
And Deeptiman, the last time Choksi was spotted was in Dominica back in May 2021. And India even tried to bring him back, but then could not. Tell us why that attempt failed.
Actually, that whole episode came as an egg on face for India, because there were allegations that actually he did not go to Dominica himself and that he was kidnapped by certain Indian agents. And the lawyers and the family of Mehul Choksi have alleged that a Hungarian woman, who they have alleged was doing all of this at the behest of an Indian agency, honey trapped him and, invited him for dinner to an apartment that she had rented in Antigua. And then he was beaten up in that apartment and bundled up in a yacht by two alleged Indian agents identified as Gurmeet Singh and Gurjeet Bhandal. And they forced him to sign, basically asked him to sign an undertaking that he was going to India of his own will, which he did not sign. And by the time he reached Dominica, the news of his arrival in Dominica leaked in local media. And then Dominica had to put him under arrest for illegal entry into the country. And India had actually sent private jet carrying Ministry of External Affairs officials and CBI officials to that country to get him back. But once he came into the custody of the court, then it became a matter of the court and India could not get him back. And this entire episode played out in a manner where the entire details of the entire operation actually came out in the media. The pictures of the supposed so-called Indian agents were splashed in newspapers. So it was actually a very poorly planned operation, if at all it was an Indian operation.
And now that he has been arrested in Belgium, what happens next? Has India applied for his extradition?
Yes, India has already pressed for his extradition with the Belgian authorities, and what is going to happen now is that Indian agencies, that is the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate, are first going to defend their application for his extradition because Mehul Choksi has opposed it, the competent court there. So first that step is going to be done, and then India is going to prepare a case for his extradition where they will find parallel provisions in Belgian law to press for his extradition and prepare their case according to the law of the land there. And then a team of Indian officials, both from the CBI and the Enforcement Directorate, will go there and camp there and fight the case to eventually get Mehul Choksi back to India.
Deeptiman, what are the charges that he faces here in India? And also, on what grounds has he been arrested in Belgium?
Well, the charges that he faces are basically forgery, cheating and money laundering. And there are parallel provisions in Belgian law for such financial frauds. And those are the charges that have been pressed there also. And basically what happens is that India presses its charges in its extradition request there, and when the extradition proceeding starts, then it is seen that whether those provisions are actually punishable under the law in that country. And on that basis, extradition is done.
And so, what are some of the challenges that India might face in getting him extradited, especially considering that such processes can take time and each country can have its own demands?
In fact, one of the biggest challenges will be the episode in Dominica, because you see, in European courts, generally, what happens that they're very seized of the issue of human rights violations, and they generally put a lot of importance to it. Now, Mehul Choksi's defense is going to argue that, look here, you are trying to give the custody of my client to a country which has already tried to use extrajudicial force to get him back to India. They have tried to abduct him and get him to India. So, how are you going to ensure that he gets a fair trial in India when these agencies are not following due process of law, even in getting him back to India? So that is going to be a big problem. Then the condition of the prisons in India, which we all know are overcrowded, is going to be brought up by the defense there. Also, let's understand that generally it takes a lot of time to extradite fugitives from anywhere. And in Europe, it is even more difficult because of the laws of that region and the emphasis that they give to, human rights issues. So all these issues are going to be brought up. And so it is going to be very difficult to get Mehul Choksi back to India.
And have there been cases where bringing someone back to India from another country has been difficult?
Yes, there are many extradition requests which have been rejected earlier in the UK on precisely the issues of the poor prison conditions in India or whether the accused will receive a fair trial or not. Also, let's remember that Nirav Modi, who is in the UK, an extradition proceeding against him has been there going on for a long time. He is not back. He had fled along with this fellow, and his extradition proceedings began many, many years ago. Then there is Vijay Mallya, who fled the country in 2016. There is an extradition proceeding against him in the UK. Even he has not been back to India. Even in far more serious cases such as terrorism, it takes a long time to extradite anyone. Tahawwur Hussain Rana, who is 26/11 case accused, he was arrested in Chicago in 2009, and it is only now that we have been able to successfully extradite him from the US. It has been 16 years. So that's how long it can take to extradite anyone from these countries.
And next, we talk about visa revocations of Indian students. In recent weeks, a number of Indian students in the US on F1 visas have had their visas revoked, lost their funding, or had their job offers pulled, often over what they say were minor legal infractions. These developments come at a time when the US has been ramping up its scrutiny of international students and tightening immigration enforcement. In many cases, students said that even though their charges had already been dropped or settled, their records were still terminated from the Student and Exchange Visitor Information System, also called SEVIS.
So SEVIS is a US government database maintained by the Department of Homeland and Security in the US.
This is the Indian Express's Vidheesha Kuntamalla, who reports on education for the paper.
And every university is required to update any change in an international student's legal or enrollment status on SEVIS. So a terminated SEVIS record means that the student cannot re-enter the US. And according to the DHS's official website, it says that immigration and custom enforcement agents may investigate to confirm the departure of the student. So it basically is a record of every international student, which is up there on the cloud, which shows whether the student has a valid visa to continue staying in the US.
And Vidheesha, can you tell us how does the termination of a SEVIS record affect a student's visa, employment, or ability to remain in the country?
So when a student and exchange visitor information system is terminated for an international student in the US, it has some legal and immigration consequences. For instance, a student from India who goes to US goes there on an F1 visa. When the SEVIS is terminated, the student is no longer in valid visa status from the date of termination. So they become out of status, which means that they are legally not allowed to remain in the US. So they will have to come back to their home country.
Right, and speaking of the recent visa revocations and the SEVIS terminations for Indian students, could you briefly explain what has triggered this action by the US authorities?
So there's a lot of changes going on right now in the Trump administration. So while the US Department of State didn't share details of exactly how many number of students are facing visa revocations, last month their Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the US has revoked visas of at least 300 foreign students. And we've quoted him in the story where he says that we gave you a visa to come and study and get a degree, not to become a social activist that tears up our university campuses.
I'll say it again. I said it everywhere. Let me be abundantly clear, okay? If you go apply for a visa right now, anywhere in the world, let me just send this message out. If you apply for a visa to enter the United States and be a student, and you tell us that the reason why you're coming to the United States is not just because you want to write op-eds, but because you want to participate in movements that are involved in doing things like vandalizing universities, harassing students, taking over buildings, creating a ruckus, we're not going to give you a visa. If you lie to us and get a visa and then enter the United States and with that visa participate in that sort of activity, we're going to take away your visa. And once you've lost
Right,
the visa,
and what he's referring to here are the protests which took place on US campuses back in 2023 against the war on Gaza. But tell us, what reasons have the authorities now cited for these visa revocations?
So we've spoken to several students where the reason cited to them was supposedly of criminal charges. So we've spoken to multiple students who've had menial charges, like, a drinking and driving case or an underage permit or skipping a stop sign. Basically, what's happening right now is that they're just plucking out these cases which have happened 2-3 years ago when the student had stepped into their country, and they are now pulling that up and they're communicating it to the university that these students are no longer valid to stay in the country because of a criminal record. So although the state has not directly communicated with the students as per our story, we've learned that the university is communicating to all these students that you've had a past criminal record in the US, so which is why your service is now terminated and you'll have to head back.
And also, when you spoke to a lawyer regarding this, they told you that in the past, visa revocations were prudential, but service status remained valid. Can you tell us what does that distinction mean and why is it important now?
So I think you're talking about an attorney that we got in touch with in Texas. So what he means by prudential visa revocation is that previously there was never this environment of, someone being charged for a menial offense. Like, for instance, if you're skipping a stop sign, you're being charged and then you go to the court and then the court asks you to pay a certain amount as fine and asks you to do a community service, and then it ends there. And previously the service would be active provided that the student goes through whatever the court has said. And after the court gives a clearance, the student would continue to go back to his studies and, continue his life in the US. But right now what's happening is if the visa is revoked but service is not terminated, usually the student continue to maintain a valid status and stay in the country for as long as the service was active earlier. So now what's happening is that there are many cases of students who've come up and said that despite the cases being cleared and despite them paying a fine and the charges being cleared and disposed of, they are still facing repercussions for what they've done years ago for a disposed case now by the service being terminated abruptly.
And also, Vidheesha, what role do universities play here? Like, are students given any prior warnings about their terminations?
So as far as the people that we've spoken to and the students that we've been in touch with, there's no prior warning as such. Whatever is being communicated by the state is what the university is also doing. And many students have also said that when they reached out to their student offices, the student offices really did not have not much idea about what to do next, but to tell them that they have to go back home. So I think everyone's still figuring out a system right now, but essentially this is what's been happening. There's a lot of uncertainty, and even the universities are not able to come up with any guidelines at their own capacity to warn the students beforehand.
And lastly, what's happening to these students after their termination? You write that several of them haven't even told their families and are struggling with anxiety and uncertainty, as you mentioned. So is there any support available for them?
So as far as support, I don't think there is any support mechanism that has been set up by the universities currently, because as I said earlier, even right now, everything's just very uncertain and everybody's trying to sort of figure out what to do next. So there is a very strong sense of anxiety and uncertainty among students as well, because there's a lot of students who are on their F1 visa, and then there's something called STEM OPT, where you also, in the last year of your course, you get a job as part of your experience. Citing legal implications of their previous offense, many of them are also losing these job opportunities. So for now, it just seems like most of them are on their own and they're having to engage their own private lawyers and pay out of their own pocket.
And in the end, we talk about Nishikant Dubey. BJP MP Nishikant Dubey yesterday sparked controversy by blaming Chief Justice of India, Sanjeev Khanna, for all civil wars in the country.
इस देश में धार्मिक युद्ध भड़काने के लिए केवल और केवल सुप्रीम कोर्ट जिम्मेवार है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट का एकमात्र उद्देश्य है, शो मी द फेस विल शो यू द लॉ। सुप्रीम कोर्ट अपनी सीमा से बाहर जा रहा है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट की सीमा यह है कि भारत का संविधान जिस कानून को बनाया उस कानून की उसको व्याख्या करनी है, और यदि वो व्याख्या नहीं कर सकती है और सब कुछ के लिए सुप्रीम कोर्ट जाना है तो इस संसद का कोई मतलब नहीं है, विधानसभा का कोई मतलब नहीं है, उसको बंद कर देना चाहिए।
The remarks quickly drew criticism from across the political spectrum. In response, BJP President JP Nanda distanced the party from the comments, stating they were not in line with party policy. However, the incident has added to a series of high-profile statements made by Dubey that have previously placed him at the center of political and institutional debate. After the controversy broke out, Dubey called himself a disciplined soldier of the party and would abide by its direction, even though he had already claimed that he had not consulted the party before making the remarks. Congress Communications head Jairam Ramesh responded by calling Nadda's statement damage control and said that Dubey and others were repeat offenders who were deployed to attack institutions. He cited similar comments made by BJP Rajya Sabha MP Dinesh Sharma, which Ramesh said reflected a consistent pattern of undermining the judiciary and political opponents.
सुप्रीम कोर्ट को कमजोर करने में लगे हुए हैं। सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जो अधिकार हैं, संविधान जो अधिकार देता है सुप्रीम कोर्ट को, उसको काटने में, उसको कमजोर करने में लगे हुए हैं। संवैधानिक पदाधिकारी भी सुप्रीम कोर्ट के खिलाफ बोल रहे हैं, मंत्री भी सुप्रीम कोर्ट के खिलाफ बोल रहे हैं, सांसद भी, बीजेपी के सांसद भी अभी सुप्रीम कोर्ट के खिलाफ बोलने में लगे हुए हैं।
Dubey, a four-time MP from Goda in Jharkhand, in February had also led from the front when he sought privileged proceedings against leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi, accusing him of distorting historical facts and damaging India's image in parliament. This followed Gandhi's remarks during his reply to the president's address, in which he claimed the Ministry of External Affairs had tried multiple times to secure an invitation for Prime Minister Narendra Modi from the Trump administration. The recent incident again reflects a broader pattern in Dubey's political conduct, playing a high-visibility role in contentious debates, defending the party line, and often targeting political opponents or institutions critical of the BJP. Dubey has also taken strong positions on demographic and migration issues. He is among the most vocal advocates for implementing the National Register of Citizens, or better known as NRC, in Jharkhand, arguing that illegal immigration from Bangladesh is altering the state's demographic composition. In one of his recent speeches in Parliament, he suggested that Malda and Murshidabad, two border districts in neighbouring West Bengal, be made union territories to control the alleged flow of undocumented migrants. You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Niharika, Nanda and me, Ichha Sharma. If you like the show, do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend it to someone you think may like it, with a friend or in your family. This is the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio or write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.